I'm James Demer, the audio nomad. Today we're going to have a conversation with Tal Kocen, who founded Dekoni Audio, which makes exceptional aftermarket earpads for headphones, as well as a brand new line of headphone cables. Tal also has a fascinating history as a live sound engineer for bands like Roseanne Cash, Amos Lee, Sarah Bareilles, and others. Tal also played trumpet in high school and college, and spent some time working for Etymotic Research. So he knows his way around IEM's headphones, and we're going to have a conversation with him today about that and hopefully some other interesting things. Tal, it's so nice to see you. Thanks for agreeing to join the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Just for reference for the audience, we met at Can Jam Dallas. We were parked next to each other, and it was a lot of fun getting to know you. Some of the things that really interest me are your career path from college as a trumpet player to a live sound mixer for some really great bands, and then into Dekoni, your transition working for Etymotic, and then back to Dekoni. What's fascinating to me, Tal, is that you really straddle the line between being a musician and a technician and a businessman and an entrepreneur. Have you always been an entrepreneur? It sounds like you've been a musician for most of your life.
I don't think I've always been an entrepreneur. I think that music has always weaved through my life. My dad was a doctor, but he also was a piano player. I used to sit down and bang on the piano, and when I was a kid, I never really learned how to play it. I did a little bit in college, but I always wanted to be. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. That was my like mission in life, and then I started playing trumpet, and I got, I just kind of had a natural knack for it and a talent for it. And, all of a sudden I was getting, accolades and awards, and I was like, oh, well, this is cool. Boost my self-confidence. And I kept playing and kept practicing. And I ended up going to college, playing trumpet, classical trumpet mainly. I grew up in Texas. I did the All-State thing. Went to the University of Colorado in Boulder. I was playing a musical in the summer in Denver that was passing through town, in the pit orchestra. I was sitting there playing the same music every night, 8 times a week, right? One of them was, twice a day. And I was sitting there and I had this realization that I don't like musicals and I don't like playing in pit orchestras. And I'm like, this is going to be my life. So I played guitar at the time as well. And I'm a songwriter. And I was also playing in a funk band out of Boulder and Denver. And we went into the recording studio, and it wasn't even a very nice recording studio. I think they had a Yamaha 01V. I think it was like back in 98 or 99. I forget. But I remember going in there and I was like, oh my God, like, this is what I want to do. Like, I love this, and that sort of started my transition to the other side. I ran out and I ended up buying a Roland, I forget the model number, but I think it was like a something 808. It was an 8-track digital recorder, hard disk recorder. Again, this was like 1998. This thing was like, at the time, like cutting edge. It had a little dot matrix green screen, but you could do editing and, all this digital editing and effects and all that kind of stuff and bouncing tracks around. And so, I was really I got super into creating sounds and doing different things with it. And I kind of was like, well, I want to go back to school for it, And so I went back to school to a place called the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences down in Tempe, Arizona. It was a great experience. It was a 9-month program. I didn't want to go through another 4 years of college. No, I couldn't afford 4 more years of college anyway. And I went to this program, and it really, they really, I guess this is a plug for them, but it gave me this base of broad knowledge, right? They had like Pro Tools certifications, and this was early Pro Tools, right? I forget what number it was, but it was like Pro Tools 4 or 5, I think. But there was Pro Tools certification, there was music business, there was music for post-production. We did live sound, which included, at the time, it was SIA Smart software, which now is owned by Rational Acoustics, a different company. Another plug. And then, and then of course there was studio recording, and, they had Neve consoles, they had SSL consoles. So it was like, you kind of left there, not as an engineer, but you left knowing what an engineer is doing if you're standing behind them, right? And so I went from there. I moved to New York City, and started working for a place called Classic Sound. It was a remote recording for classical and jazz, which was right up my alley at the time. And then it was also a mastering studio, Scott Hull Mastering. And so we were mastering like John Mayer's first record. Soon after I got there, Room for Squares was mastered there. Garbage mastered all the records with him. I mean, tons and tons of artists mastered the records with him. Side note, my first day there, and if you've ever worked in a recording studio, or if any of your audience ever has, when you first go as an intern, they really beat you up. And my first day, I walk in the building and they're like, okay, hey, nice to meet you. And they said, here's a DirecTV antenna, go install this on the roof. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, go, there's roof at, go out here, you can go up these stairs, get the doorman to get you out on the roof, and you can install it on the roof. They were on the top floor anyway. It was a 6-story building. You run the wire down through the drop ceiling. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, any instructions?
Were they just pulling your leg? Was it real? Did they really?
I did.
This wasn't a joke?
Wasn't a joke. I had no instructions other than what was in the box. I had to go up. I went up on the roof, read the instructions. I figured out, okay, I have to have it pointing at the, towards the satellite somewhere in the sky,
Right.
And I installed it, ran the wires, hooked it up to the TV, and got it working. And that was like day 1, and part of day 2.
Yeah.
And then it was, from there, it just kind of, I became in charge of all of the I got hired as the assistant, and I was in charge of all the equipment. So it was, Tascam DA88s and DA38s and all that DTRS 8-track stuff. And then all the equipment, I would go take it all ahead of the engineer. And let's say we do a session at Carnegie Hall, right? I think we did Anushka Shankar at Carnegie Hall. My job was to go and set up a studio backstage, right? And so that was sort of my first real troubleshooting, challenging experience.
Is that because you were recording the concert?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that really didn't have anything to do with the house sound or the live sound. You were just recording the show.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of stress because you can't just have the artist do a take 2. It's a live recording. Plus you're also working with the front of house audio mixer, probably sharing mics.
We did both, right? So we did some where the hall would be rented out, and we would come in with, one session I remember was Roland Hanna. He was a piano player, jazz pianist. And we spent, 3 or 4 days in this hall recording him. And then all that stuff was taken back to the studio and edited and all that good stuff. So some things were live, some things were not. It just depended on the what the session was and what it called for.
Yeah.
I'd say most were not live. Most were sessions that we did and, recorded. And then at the same time, I was also working live sound in some venues around New York City, mainly in one called Warsaw, which was out in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I think they're still doing the odd show there, I believe. But I was working in somebody's project studio. The owner of the studio was a live sound engineer. He was he would tour, and so I would take care of sessions in the studio while he was on the road. He came in one day and said, "Hey, I got this thing. It's 4 shows, 2 in New York, 2 in LA. Like, it's already all advanced and scheduled out. Can you take care of it?" And I was like, probably, you know. And so I did those dates, and I was like, that was fun, you know, staying in fancy hotels, leading these guys around, doing these concerts, right?
And that was live. You did 4 live shows.
Not too long later, he was like, "Hey, I got this other thing that was just offered to me. I can't do it. It's 2 weeks with this singer-songwriter. It's her and her husband, and, you know, driving around in a minivan. You know, can you do it?" And I'm like, probably, you know. And he's like, "Nothing's advanced, nothing's done, you know." And I said, "Well, you know, okay, you know, cool." So he taught me how to do it. He taught me how to advance it, how to, you know, what do I need to do? How do I book the hotels? How do I book, you know, all this stuff. And like, they gave me I got a credit card and a schedule, and they were like, "Go to town."
This is crazy. So not only you were managing and you were also doing front of house sound for the band?
Correct. So I was tour managing, yeah.
Okay.
A lot of the gigs I did, I was doing both tour management and front of house.
That must have been a rush. Was it like, were you like terrified, and then at the end of the day you're like, "Oh my God, that was such a thrill because it worked and nothing burnt down"?
I'm a fast learner. I learn better on the fly. So really, it worked for me. And then from there, it just kind of took off. I think I have the right temperament. I'm very calm. I'm very, you know, when faced with a problem, you know, I tend to not freak out and just sort of like hone in on it and figure out how to get through it. So from there, it kind of went. You know, I toured with, you know, everybody from Mark Broussard, Julianne Hough. I toured with Sarah Bareilles. I toured with Hot Tuna, Ingrid Michaelson, mostly singer-songwriters. That was my thing.
Amos Lee, I saw.
Yeah, Amos Lee, I toured with him.
Roseanne Cash.
So I still tour with Roseanne Cash. She was the more...
Yeah.
So in 2010, I got off the road because I had a child. And it was enough was enough. You know, I was touring 10 months out of the year. I wasn't home. It was tiring. It was, you know, it was a bit of a train wreck.
So you've been touring for a while, and I know you have a family because your son is a
percussionist. Yeah.
He's a percussionist in the marching band. So I would imagine at some point you're thinking to yourself, "Gosh, I can't be on the road all the time. I got to be a little bit closer to home in Texas." And we know that you started Dekoni. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition?
Yeah. So in 2015, I had a pair of, you know, my old Sony 7506s that I was desperate to find new pads for. The old pads were flaked off. I hadn't worn them in probably 3 or 4 years because of that, at least. And so, you know, we ended up going down this rabbit hole of, you know, making earpads. You know, I wanted an upgrade. I wanted the best thing about Beats headphones for my Sony headphones, right? So the earpads. And so we went down this path. We talked to a bunch of factories. Some were into it, working with us, and some weren't. And so we worked with a couple of factories over in Asia who were willing to, you know, use our designs and, you know, work with us with different foams and different materials while we tested them. And, you know, we spent about a year going through different variants and variations, and till we kind of settled on our, you know, sheepskin and fenestrated sheepskin and our velour and our hybrid and these other materials that we use today. And then in 2019, I actually left the company. I left the company to go work for a company called Lucid Hearing, owned Etymotic. We acquired Weston Audio. While I was there, I was running product development, made tons and tons of different products with them just in 4 years. And at the end of 4 years, I decided it was time to move on. I had been talking to my old partner at Dekoni, and we always stayed in touch. And he was joking with me once, and he said, "Hey, if you ever want to come back, you know, we welcome you back." And so I called him up one day and I said, "Hey, about that, you know, were you serious?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm serious." I'm like, "Well, let's talk." And so we talked and we worked something out. And so I left Lucid and West Hunter and Etymotic and came back home, so to speak. You know, in Dekoni, when I came back, you know, I had very specific goals, because when I left, I was feeling I felt like it was very tenuous, right? I felt like the company was only making ear pads, really. We had a couple little things here and there and ear tips. But I felt like the business just did not have real stability. I felt like it very easily could crumble. And so I said, we need to have other stuff happening. I want to position us as an accessory company. I don't want to just be the ear pad guys, right? I said, we're more than that. And I think that just saying that is selling ourselves short, right? We are the premier audiophile accessory company, and we just don't have all the products yet that make us an accessory company. So I said, we're going to make some cables. And so I designed these, I spent the last year working on these ensemble cables, which is our modular cable system that has, multiple amplifier connections, multiple headphone connections, multiple types of cable, and it's all modular with a custom designed interlocking 2.5 millimeter connector buried in a nice aluminum housing at the splitter. And so it splits here. And you can have multiple headphones, you can have multiple amplifiers, balanced, unbalanced. You can easily swap them out. And so far it's been, they're selling great right now. They're out on sale. Our first sales were at Can Jam in Dallas. And, we sold more cables than we did earpads there, which is promising.
That's so good. I tried to buy some, but you were sold out. So I've got to try to order some.
Now we're up and running. They're starting to percolate through our distribution network as well. And so it's going, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
I think it's something that was, there's a couple of companies that do similar things with, kind of down at the connector end, and, they're all like custom made. It takes 3 weeks to get them. They're using off the shelf parts. They're not, so we wanted to design something that was aesthetically beautiful, that was functionally great and mass producible.
I think one of my favorite things about those cables, besides just the brilliant modularity of the cable, is it's a really high quality cable at a fair price point. It doesn't feel like a snake oil cable. It doesn't feel like you're trying to sell me some magical, audio nirvana in a cable.
Yeah.
It's a great sounding cable, and it's made well, and it's beautiful to look at, and it's a fair price.
Yeah, that was, one of my goals in that was, I saw cables, a lot of people get cables on AliExpress, and they're $15 cables, and whatever. And then it kind of goes to I feel like it goes to the $200 to $300 to $400 range.
Mm-hmm. Or more, some of them.
I feel like there was a hole in the affordable range for a good, solid cable. And so I wanted to make this, this special cable, this modular cable system in that space. I wanted it to fill in the hole. So, our prices are starting, around $100, depending on what options you choose. It's between $100 and $140, at retail. Yeah. We are coming out with some other models that'll have, PC UHD copper and some other special materials, and those will be more expensive, but not because we are pricing them out of the water, but because the materials are more expensive.
Is there anything in the future for Dekoni? You've got premium pads, you have premium cables. Can you talk about anything that you're kicking around or that you might be coming out with?
Look, the next year is going to be cables. That's my focus. Okay. That's my goal. And there's a couple cases we're working on. There's some other pads we're going to be releasing. But really, my focus this year is on cables. I want to grow that brand. I want to grow that side of the business. And then we'll see after that.
I would imagine you'll be at Can Jams in the future. Is there anywhere else that if someone wanted to have a conversation with you, will you be at the NAMM show?
I will be at NAMM with my other company, which is a custom IM company called Dark Matter Audio Labs.
Oh.
We will be at NAMM. They can come find me there. Hall A for anybody who wants to come see us.
Well, I'll be at NAMM, so hopefully I'll come see you.
Cool.
Maybe we'll have to have another conversation to talk about dark matter.
I hope so.
I appreciate the time, and I know you got to run off and pick up your kids.
Got to go do the dad thing.
Well, take care. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This video is brought to you by Linsoul.com. Linsoul sells IEMs, headphones, amplifiers, digital to analog converters, cables, really just about anything you could want for personal hi-fi or even home hi-fi. Their prices are great, the quality is exceptional, and their customer service is really second to none. Check them out in the link below.